questions. And the first ones really relate to this types of legal entity, and it's a confusing area. So, Chris, do you want to read the first question?
Yeah. So a question. This came via email, I think, ahead of the evening. Somebody asked, can you explore the ways that commercial and charitable entities can coexist? So what is that interface? And then the second part of that, I guess, and particularly keen on the social enterprise angle, but not clear enough around how this is treated. Do you register as a company, trust, charity? Yeah, so I think that sort of the angle of the question is clear enough. And maybe you have the same question, especially with a new idea, what should we be? Yeah, so Stephen?
Yeah. So what we've done is written a few words on the screen here, and that's going to guide our talk. But this is the time now where if you think of something else or you want to contribute, then that's welcome. But I guess what we typically would see is that people tend to end up looking at two different options, which would be, if you wanted to use traditional words, it would be a for-profit structure, which would be a company, or a not-for-profit structure, which tends to be a trust. And that's really putting it in black and white terms, and there's all kinds of variations in between. But if you wanted to really just, which way should I go, I need to choose one, that's kind of the two options that we see people looking at the most. Do you want to?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that, I suppose, is that, in terms of a trust, well, you can have a trust that's not charitable, although it has different rules that apply to it. You can have a company that is charitable. I think we've got some representatives here who have charitable companies. And you can have a company in which the shares are all owned by a charity. And the company itself might not be charitable, but all of the shares might be owned by a charitable entity. So there actually is quite a lot of scope for mixing and matching in terms of which of those structures you go for. So probably a whole bunch of questions are going to come into answering, well, which one should I do? Why is it that most people tend to go with a charitable trust or an incorporated society if they want to be a charity, rather than, say, going with a charitable company? And it's probably more around the administration side of it, or because that's what everyone else does, rather than necessarily there being a strong reason for it.
Yeah. So I guess that's part of the confusion, is there are lots of options, and we put incorporated society there as another option. But it really comes down to the motivations of what you want to achieve and which structure is going to be best. And I think the issue in New Zealand, which I'll go into in a minute, is that there's not really, particularly if you're talking about social enterprises, so social enterprises have a purpose beyond making profit. That's really, in my mind, that's how I think of them. So there's some reason why they exist. So that, sure, they're making money, but it's not to make a shareholder wealthier. Either through the way the people that they employ, or through the product that they're making, or through some other mechanism. They're slightly different to the company, the traditional company structure, which would be for-profit. So it really comes down to what do you want to achieve with your purpose and your aims as to which one you choose. But I did that little diagram with the charity owning the company, because where we often end up, so just to, we can go into all the detail, but we often end up with the point of the charity, which has the tax-exempt status, charitable status. It then owns a trading arm, which is the company. And if you go down that route, then in a way you get the best of both worlds. So that's what we often see, is that people end up with this structure where they have both in place.
Yeah, well, I suppose just to throw it out there as well, I think, and I don't necessarily want to put people on the spot, but one person I hear that I think is involved with both of those structures, Roger, with Musgroves, that's a company that's charitable, I think.
It is, yeah.
But the shareholder of that company is a charitable trust itself as well.
Correct.
So what was your reason? Do you know, were you involved in the decision making for that structure?
Yeah. I know some of the reasons, but not all the reasons.
Okay.
Yeah. I think some of it was the advice that we received at the time.
Okay.
And so we've lived with that advice, and Mashup as the charitable company, but it's 100% owned by Recycle Kingdom,
Yes.
which is the charitable trust.
Yes.
It's complicated in some ways, but it served its purpose in other ways. So
Yeah.
I guess I always think also how else could we set it up?
Yeah.
Would it be easier
Yeah.
or harder?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's options.
Yeah. And what we've seen with some of the other charities that we've worked with who have charitable companies as well is that sometimes you do have to think carefully about your structure in terms of if you're deliberately setting up a business, and even if it's a social enterprise business, and even if you're saying, I want all of the profit from this business to go towards charitable purposes, if you set it up itself as a charity, then in the future when you need to, say, raise additional funding or circumstances change and you want to bring other people in, it can be harder to do that because you can't bring investors in because you've gone with the charitable structure. So, so I think it's
But the flip side of that is that sometimes the charities want to go for grant funding
Yes.
or receive city council or government funding.
Yes.
And so part of their criteria, often they'll look at the structure and say, well, you're a private company, so that makes it difficult for us to provide you this grant funding, even though we understand that what you're doing is helping a segment of the community that we love, we endorse what you're doing, but we just can't
We
do
can't
that.
support that because of that criteria. One of the first things they teach you at law school to answer any question is that the best answer is usually it depends. And I feel like that's the answer we're giving you tonight. It depends. But unfortunately, it really is the case. This is one of those questions you should think about really carefully when you're setting up a new entity. But the right structure for you is really going to depend on a whole range of different circumstances. I think, did we have a slide of some of those?
We'll go to the next slide because I think that gives some of these considerations and hopefully it gets your mind working. But the last one, I just want to say community ownership. I think that's a whole area that we should start exploring more as a community, rather than traditional concepts of ownership where one individual owns that piece of land. Can we develop models where actually we as a community come together and own it? And I've done a short little paper about that, just looking at Maori concepts of ownership, because if you look at the whānau and think about how that works, it's not the same way as Western conceptions of land ownership. So that's a whole other area. So if it's of interest to you, let me know and we can dialogue about that. But these are just some of the considerations, the profits, who's going to benefit from the enterprise, assuming it's actually making money. And one of the key questions there is if you have a great idea for the business, it's all well and good to do it for the benefit of society in the future, but who's going to put the food on the table when you get home at night, and how are the profits actually going to come back? Will they come back to you privately or not? And then the perception, I think there are real assumptions. If you walk into a meeting and you say, I am the shareholder of a private company, people will automatically assume, well, you're for profit. Whereas if you walk in and you say, I am on the board of a trust, they're more likely to assume, well, you must be not for profit. So just those assumptions are important to realize. And then the grants we already touched on, what will they fund? Stakeholders, I think is worth mentioning. How do you involve people? We'll touch on this with the boards in a minute, but we had somebody who said, look, I've got 13 people who want to support me. That's going to be a really big board. And we said, yeah, that's too big. Take the 5 people who are really motivated and represent diverse interests and keep the others, give them a special designation, whatever, but don't get everybody at the board level. But how do you involve your stakeholders, and do you give them shareholdings, or and then just keeping in mind the compliance. The trust deed or the constitution has to say what it needs to say to meet the criteria to get charitable status.
And just going back to the top on the profits, so that's one of the really interesting things about the rise in dialogue, at least in relation to social enterprises, people thinking creatively about well, who should be sharing in the profits of this endeavour, and there can be a mixing and matching of both charitable purposes and personal profit purposes, and it's there's also the potential for involving all of your workers and all of the different contributors to the project as participating in that profit as well. So yeah, there's a lot of scope for thinking creatively about your structure and about these kinds of fundamental questions that people typically have.
Yeah. And then I put the future there because I actually think that maybe it's time that we revisited the legal structures that are available, and maybe it's time that we had one that was called social enterprise company that took the best bits of what, because it's been going in other jurisdictions, like if you look at Scotland or the UK or Canada or America, they have forms of legal entity that exist for just what we're talking about. They take the best bits of the trust and the charitable and mix it up. So I think we could look at those examples and come up with something that really worked for New Zealand, that became a world-leading form of entity, where around the world they looked at New Zealand and said, wow, look at what they did. We should try that too. So I know that groups like Akina are working on papers, and there's others involved in this sector who are questioning, and the government in December last year, if anyone's interested, ask me, because you can tell I'm really interested in this topic, but they produced a paper, the cabinet came out with a paper saying basically we endorse social enterprise, we need to do further research and study about the sector because we don't know who is a social enterprise. So I think that's all fine and good, but if we could actually get them to say we need a new legal entity, imagine what a game changer that would be. People would be like, what's a social enterprise company? And that would really advance the cause, more than just having studies about how many people are trying it and things. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know, and I'm happy to send you some papers and information. But the final thing on these points is just this little scale here. I was trying to visually represent some of these concepts. So we've got the charitable company and the charitable trust, and we've got the emoticon of happiness on the top, and the confused, not sure on the bottom. So the good side of these structures, so we're talking about the charitable types of entities, is that everything goes for the purpose, they get tax exemption, you can access grants, it's well understood, there's limited liability if you're a company. But the downside here is, it's very difficult to get private investors into a charity, because there's no return. You can't access the capital markets. And same with charitable companies, because the shareholders won't privately benefit, it's very hard to get capital. Usually at the startup phase, that's what you need. You've got the great idea, but you need funding, you need money. And so it's this catch-22 of, well, which structure should I choose? And I need money, but if I become a charity, I probably won't get private investors. But if I might get some grants, but that's all dependent on the future political decisions. That might dry up next year. So that kind of just visually represents some of the issues. So, does anyone else have any comments or thoughts before we move on from this topic?
Steve, I was thinking about the same. Companies are moving anyway towards what I call triple bottom line.
Yep.
We're looking deliberately for a social return, for an environmental return, as well as a shareholder. Is that broadly?
Yeah, I'd definitely say so. And particularly in New Zealand, there's growing awareness of benefit corporations, so B Corps, which is sort of the modern day phrasing for triple bottom line. And we'll touch on that, I think, in the next series of slides. Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, is that what other people think? Are you seeing this sort of move towards? Yeah.
Is that an international trend, or are we a little bit ahead?
No, I think it is an international trend, and Rachel from Akina is here, so she might comment on the fact that we're having the Social Enterprise World Forum in Christchurch in September, and there's going to be 1,200 people gathering from around the world coming here, and it hasn't quite hit the radar yet for everybody, but but that's a big deal. Last year it was held in Hong Kong, and this year it's here. So it's an amazing opportunity to really highlight some of these issues for New Zealand, but also to challenge the way people are thinking. Because ultimately, if we could impact not just social enterprises, but imagine if traditional profit companies, what if they thought about their sourcing methods, and if they looked at, well, where do we get our paper from, who's doing our catering, who's coming into our offices, like if we could get companies that are multi-million-dollar companies starting to think along these lines, then that would have a huge game-changing effect, because that would then flow into all of the companies that could service them. So yeah.
That might be
about the role of foundations with profit company.
The role of foundations.
Foundations used to be the way that a profit-making company would deal with its charity through a foundation.
Yep, and that still happens.
Yeah, there's in New Zealand, unlike in say the US, where the foundation is sort of its own recognised legal structure. It's not exactly the case in New Zealand. So you can have an entity that you call a foundation here, but it's probably actually a charitable trust.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So, but you're right. That is one. That is you're absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's no difference in New Zealand law if you call yourself a foundation. It's a charitable trust, charitable company, and a private company.
Yeah. So if you're a company, if you're a limited liability company, you'll have the limited in your name.
Yeah.
If you're a charitable trust, you don't have to have any special words in your name. You don't have to have the word trust in there or foundation or anything like that. Yeah. You just have to have it. You have to have a trustee behind you, basically.
Can you call yourself charitable unless you, if you haven't been registered as a charity with the Commission?
With charity services?
Yeah.
You can.
Well, sorry, you used to be the Commission.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's confusing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can call yourself a charity, and for some purposes you still get the benefits of charitable status, but you can't call yourself a registered charity. And I think where the distinction comes through, charities that have registered with charity services will cite their registration number as part of their description of who they are.